Song of Solomon 3:1-6:3. Devotional focus verse. Thou art all fair, my love, there is no spot in thee. Song of Solomon 4:7. My father-in-law spent 20 years of his married life in a culture where at that time speaking favorably about one's wife was considered improper, and compliments from others about her were immediately dismissed outright. Furthermore, men in that country never showed any public indicator of affection or appreciation toward their spouses. In fact, women typically walked 3 or 4 steps behind their husbands when together on the streets. You can imagine that this went against the grain of my loving and quite demonstrative father-in-law. In spite of cultural norms, he frequently admonished the men of his acquaintance there, as well as men here at home, to tell their wives, "I love you," every single day. Not only did my father-in-law verbalize his love for his wife, but he also demonstrated his regard for her in many visible ways. Rather than insisting that she walk behind him, he often took her hand or arm as they strolled together. He brought her little gifts just because, and wrote her touching poems. He was the first to compliment her and made no secret of his appreciation for her cooking, her housekeeping skills, and her unwavering support of him. His example made an impression. To this day, more than a decade after his final trip to the country where the two of them had been missionaries, men who knew my father-in-law recall that he frequently told them to express their love for their wives on a daily basis. Today's text includes many beautiful compliments and tender expressions of love. Though unquestionably heartfelt, my father-in-law's words were probably never as eloquent as those of Solomon or the Shulamite. The extravagant lyrics of this passage portray feelings of adoration and admiration in a manner many scholars consider unparalleled. Still, there is a lesson for all of us in this passage. When we love someone, we should not be hesitant to express our feelings, both in words and in actions. After years of marriage, perhaps familiarity causes us to forget to verbalize our admiration or appreciation for our spouses. The same concept can extend to our children, other family members, and close friends. Loving words of affirmation backed by thoughtful actions and caring concern can enhance and strengthen any relationship. Background information. This portion of the Song of Solomon describes the Shulamite's dreams about her beloved, Solomon's proposal and love songs, and the maiden's rejection of his ardent efforts to win her hand. Chapter 3:1-5 describes the Shulamite maiden telling the women of Jerusalem about her dreams, which reflected her love for her shepherd sweetheart. In those dreams, she arose out of bed and went into the city streets searching for the object of her love. The inconvenience and danger of the hour were of no consequence to her because of her focus on her quest. In verse 5, she asked the women not to attempt to stir up love for the king. The inserted and italicized word "my" in this verse makes the reference seem personal, but without that addition to the original wording, the young woman was merely stating the principle that love must be handled with care and not aroused before its proper time. Verses 6-11 give details of a royal procession which brought the Shulamite maiden and Solomon together. The word bed in verse 7 refers to a canopied couch carried on men's shoulders and used by people of high status. The royal escort in verse 8 included armed guards, which usually accompanied royal processions because of the danger of highway robbers in those times. Verse 11 refers to Solomon's coronation day, in which his mother, Bathsheba, appealed to King David to make good his oath for Solomon to be his successor. See 1 Kings 1:15 through 40. The whole passage seems to be an attempt to promote Solomon and to persuade the young woman to accept his proposal. Chapter 4 is a portrayal of Solomon as a suitor. The enamored Solomon described the maiden in words of admiration and praise, but in verse 6, the Shulamite demurred and spoke instead of her longing for her mountain home. Solomon responded with his second song, renewing his pursuit. See verses 7 through 15. Amana, Shinir, and Hermon in verse 8 refer to mountains in the anti-Lebanon range. The word sister in verse 9 is a term of affection showing that Solomon regarded the Shulamite with the respect and honor he would accord to one of his own blood. The enclosed garden, alluded to in verse 12, denotes sexual purity. In those days, the fields of the area were not fenced. While passers-by were allowed to partake of crops for provender on their journeys, they were not permitted access to the walled gardens. Those were for the pleasure of the owner only. Saffron, in verse 14, refers to a purple flower which yields a yellow dye and makes a fragrant ointment when mixed with olive oil. Calamus refers to an aromatic spice, and aloes is an aromatic wood which came from Bangladesh and China. Chapter 5 describes a time of separation. The Shulamite was at the palace in Jerusalem, and the women of the court were with her once more. Verses 2 through 8 describe another dream, in which the Shulamite dreamed her shepherd lover had come seeking her in vain. In verse 4, the term bowels refers to the seat of emotion or deep affection, similar to current usage of the term heart. In verses 10 through 16, the Shulamite described her beloved shepherd with beautiful imagery. The first 3 verses of chapter 6 seem to be an inquiry regarding the whereabouts of the shepherd by one or more of the daughters of Jerusalem. The women expressed their interest in helping the Shulamite find him, but she indicated that her beloved was hers alone. Conclusion: we may not have the eloquence of Solomon or the Shulamite, but our relationships will be strengthened if we do not hesitate to incorporate words of praise and appreciation.
Song of Solomon. Chapter 3. By night on my bed I sought him whom my soul loveth, I sought him, but I found him not. I will rise now, and go about the city and the streets, and in the broad ways I will seek him whom my soul loveth, I sought him, but I found him not. The watchmen that go about the city found me, to whom I said, Saw ye him whom my soul loveth? It was but a little that I passed from them, but I found him whom my soul loveth, I held him, and would not let him go, until I had brought him into my mother's house, and into the chamber of her that conceived me. I charge you, O ye daughters of Jerusalem, by the roes, and by the hinds of the field, that ye stir not up, nor wake my love, till he please. Who is this that cometh out of the wilderness like pillars of smoke, perfumed with myrrh and frankincense, with all powders of the merchant? Behold his bed, which is Solomon's, 80 valiant men are about it, of the valiant of Israel. They all hold swords, being expert in war, every man hath his sword upon his thigh because of fear in the night. King Solomon made himself a chariot of the wood of Lebanon. He made the pillars thereof of silver, the bottom thereof of gold, the covering of it of purple, the midst thereof being paved with love, for the daughters of Jerusalem. Go forth, O ye daughters of Zion, and behold King Solomon with a crown wherewith his mother crowned him in the day of his espousals, and in the day of the gladness of his heart. Song of Solomon. Chapter 4. Behold, thou art fair, my love, behold, thou art fair, thou hast dove's eyes within thy locks, thy hair is as a flock of goats, that appear from Mount Gilead. Thy teeth are like a flock of sheep that are even shorn, which came up from the washing, whereof every one bare twins, and none is barren among them. Thy lips are like a thread of scarlet, and thy speech is comely, thy temples are like a piece of a pomegranate within thy locks. Thy neck is like the tower of David builded for an armory, whereon there hang 1,000 bucklers, all shields of mighty men. Thy two breasts are like two young roes that are twins, which feed among the lilies. Until the day break, and the shadows flee away, I will get me to the mountain of myrrh, and to the hill of frankincense. Thou art all fair, my love, there is no spot in thee. Come with me from Lebanon, my spouse, with me from Lebanon, look from the top of Amana, from the top of Shinir and Hermon, from the lions' dens, from the mountains of the leopards. Thou hast ravished my heart, my sister, my spouse, thou hast ravished my heart with one of thine eyes, with one chain of thy neck. How fair is thy love, my sister, my spouse! How much better is thy love than wine! And the smell of thine ointments than all spices. Thy lips, O my spouse, drop as the honeycomb, honey and milk are under thy tongue, and the smell of thy garments is like the smell of Lebanon. A garden enclosed is my sister, my spouse, a spring shut up, a fountain sealed. Thy plants are an orchard of pomegranates, with pleasant fruits, camphire, with spikenard. Spikenard and saffron, calamus and cinnamon, with all trees of frankincense, myrrh and aloes, with all the chief spices. A fountain of gardens, a well of living waters, and streams from Lebanon. Awake, O north wind, and come, thou south, blow upon my garden, that the spices thereof may flow out. Let my beloved come into his garden, and eat his pleasant fruits. Song of Solomon. Chapter 5. I am come into my garden, my sister, my spouse, I have gathered my myrrh with my spice, I have eaten my honeycomb with my honey, I have drunk my wine with my milk. Eat, O friends, drink, yea, drink abundantly, O beloved. I sleep, but my heart waketh, it is the voice of my beloved that knocketh, saying, Open to me, my sister, my love, my dove, my undefiled, for my head is filled with dew, and my locks with the drops of the night. I have put off my coat, how shall I put it on? I have washed my feet, how shall I defile them? My beloved put in his hand by the hole of the door, and my bowels were moved for him. I rose up to open to my beloved, and my hands dropped with myrrh, and my fingers with sweet-smelling myrrh, upon the handles of the lock. I opened to my beloved, but my beloved had withdrawn himself, and was gone, my soul failed when he spake, I sought him, but I could not find him, I called him, but he gave me no answer. The watchmen that went about the city found me, they smote me, they wounded me, the keepers of the walls took away my veil from me. I charge you, O daughters of Jerusalem, if ye find my beloved, that ye tell him, that I am sick of love. What is thy beloved more than another beloved, O thou fairest among women? What is thy beloved more than another beloved, that thou dost so charge us? My beloved is white and ruddy, the chiefest among 10,000. His head is as the most fine gold, his locks are bushy, and black as a raven. His eyes are as the eyes of doves by the rivers of waters, washed with milk, and fitly set. His cheeks are as a bed of spices, as sweet flowers, his lips like lilies, dropping sweet-smelling myrrh. His hands are as gold rings set with a beryl, his belly is as bright ivory overlaid with sapphires. His legs are as pillars of marble, set upon sockets of fine gold, his countenance is as Lebanon, excellent as the cedars. His mouth is most sweet, yea, he is altogether lovely. This is my beloved, and this is my friend, O daughters of Jerusalem. Song of Solomon. Chapter 6. Whither is thy beloved gone, O thou fairest among women? Whither is thy beloved turned aside? That we may seek him with thee. My beloved is gone down into his garden, to the beds of spices, to feed in the gardens, and to gather lilies. I am my beloved's, and my beloved is mine, he feedeth among the lilies. Thou art beautiful, O my love, as Tirzah, comely as Jerusalem, terrible as an army with banners. Turn away thine eyes from me, for they have overcome me, thy hair is as a flock of goats that appear from Gilead. Thy teeth are as a flock of sheep which go up from the washing, whereof every one beareth twins, and there is not one barren among them. As a piece of a pomegranate are thy temples within thy locks. There are 80 queens, and 80 concubines, and virgins without number. My dove, my undefiled is but one, she is the only one of her mother, she is the choice one of her that bare her. The daughters saw her, and blessed her, yea, the queens and the concubines, and they praised her. Who is she that looketh forth as the morning, fair as the moon, clear as the sun, and terrible as an army with banners? I went down into the garden of nuts to see the fruits of the valley, and to see whether the vine flourished and the pomegranates budded. Or ever I was aware, my soul made me like the chariots of Amminadab. Return, return, O Shulamite, return, return, that we may look upon thee. What will ye see in the Shulamite? As it were the company of 2 armies.